Hello everyone, and welcome to the kind of first episode of Strategic Angling, where we're going to really get into the strategic angling part of this. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. I got a couple special guests with me today. Hopefully you're going to see quite a bit over the next bunch of episodes. I want to let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to kind of jump in and talk about these hooks.
Yeah, I'm JJ Patton. I fish the river mostly, a lot in the eastern Iowa. That's our best option. Also enjoy traveling and doing that too, but happy to be here and hopefully pass on some tips for you.
I'm Chuck Pfizer, live here locally, and I been fishing tournaments for about 20 some years. Hopefully we'll give you some new insight on the three hook choices we're going to talk about.
Awesome. So if you don't know, my name is Brady Hanna. I run the Lost Grove League. Like to be out there. I've gotten into river fishing a bit, but relatively new, and looking forward to learning just like you guys are about these different things. So our first topic, maybe not the most fun thing, but it's hooks. And you know, a hook isn't going to win you a tournament, but it might lose you one if you're using the wrong hook. So we wanted to just cover kind of an overall basics, and then maybe some specific ones here that we use that are more specialized. So I'm going to kick it over to Chuck. He's going to tell us a little bit about the three main types of hooks.
Yeah, basically we're going to talk about three hooks that cover about 99% of all your bass applications. The good thing about these three hooks we're going to talk about is Matic K&K carries every one of these different hooks, and he carries them in several different brands, from Gamakatsu, Owner, Hayabusa, and VMC. Mm-hmm. So the first hook that we're going to talk about is the offset round bend hook. This is a hook that I don't use very much. A lot of people do. The second hook is going to be offset extra wide gap or a superline hook. And the third hook we're going to talk about will be a straight shank hook.
Perfect. So those are the three different types. Can you tell us a little bit about, the three different types?
Well, the round bend hook has very little offset. I only really use it for Carolina rigging when I'm making long casts. A lot of people use this on thinner baits where the bait's not real thick. That's about the only time I use it, though, is on Carolina rig.
Okay.
It's the least hook that I use.
And then the other
probably the most
type is the...
Then you got an EWG hook, which stands for extra wide gap. These I use for casting applications as well. Casting thicker baits like a horny toad, a big worm, a tube. That's about the only time that I use the EWG.
Okay. And the last one?
And then the straight shank hook, which is my favorite hook, and I use for any type of pitching, flipping, or vertical presentations. And the reason is the gap of the hook. You can virtually set this hook in any position when you're getting ready to set the hook and you see the fish bite. It's got a big wide gap from the eye of the hook to the point of the hook, or the eye of the hook to the point of the hook. There's a big gap, so you can set the hook in any position, whether you're straight up and down, sideways. The hook is always in position to stick the fish. So I think your rate of putting a fish in the boat is a lot higher with this hook.
Okay, so that gives us a kind of an overview of the three different types of hooks that are predominantly used. JJ, do you want to pick one out that you specifically find yourself using and talk about kind of why?
Well, I'll talk about the offset shank round bend. I use this on Carolina rigs. Also think this is best on like floating worm presentations where you're casting a floating worm.
And why would you say that about
well,
the floating worms?
I think that the way the hook lays in the worm, with the worm being pretty thin, it just fits in there better. I don't really like a straight shank when I'm working a bait, like casting out there and working it. I like the straight shank when I'm flipping, but when I'm working a bait, I like to have an offset, either this or the EWG. But I think this one lays into a finesse worm or a trick worm or a floating worm a lot better than the EWG, and I just think the bait works better, and it lays in there nice. There is a nice offset on this compared to the EWG. It's there's a little bit more gap space between your line and then the hook is up a little bit. So sometimes I'll use it too if I'm using a thin bait like a speed craw or a baby brush hog or something that doesn't have a lot of bulk to it, and especially when I'm casting at a brush pile or using a casting rather than a flipping presentation.
Well, it's good for a light line too.
Yes.
You know, real easy to get penetration with that hook.
Yeah, like a 4-inch ringworm. This hook goes in there real nice. I think sometimes you know I kind of base it on what it looks like when you rig it up. If you got a big wide gap coming out of a little thin worm, it just doesn't look right to me. And if it doesn't look right, you're probably not going to catch anything on it.
Yeah, you got to match the hook to the presentation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't have anything to add about that hook. I probably need to use that more for like things you mentioned. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't use it a lot either, but it's a good hook. It does. It does. Hook 'em.
Chuck, you want to pick one out? So JJ was using the Gamakatsu 54114. If I'll put a picture of it on the screen right now, but that's the hook he was using.
Yeah, basically my favorite's the straight shank. I use the straight shank for any type of flipping presentation, whether I'm using braid or if I'm using heavy fluorocarbon. These hooks also on a straight shank, they're not always a heavy hook. You can get them in thin hook too, where you're throwing maybe a little trick worm or a robo worm. A lot of guys will use the Nico style, a little thinner, throwing it on a spinning rod, 7 or 10 pound. But mainly I like to throw it on 65-pound braid, flipping a craw, flipping a creature bait. That's the way I like to fish. So.
And what makes that hook so good is, like you mentioned, the just serious gap between line tie and end of hook. But what the downfall of that hook is casting to a brush pile. That's a snaggy hook and not one I would choose.
Well, absolutely. You probably want to do an EWG on a casting application. Right. Or the round bend, depending on what bait you choose.
Yeah.
But this hook, the good thing about this hook, no matter if you set the hook up or sideways, at any position, this hook is always ready to penetrate the hook's mouth, the fish's mouth.
Yep.
So you're always ready to go. Sometimes you all of a sudden sometimes you're in the boat and you're in a weird position, but you see a bite. You don't have to be conscious of how you set the hook. You can just set the hook, and pretty much any position this is facing will get penetration.
Yep.
So it's a really, really good hook.
Now, is there a specific straight shank that you find yourself going to more than others?
Well, there's 2 of them that I use, and only 2 of them. I either use the Gamakatsu, they make an extra strong flipping hook, or I'll use an owner jungle hook. And they'll range from a 3 to 5/0. Usually my most favorite's a 4/0 hook. It seems to match the baits that I throw the most. The 4/0 it doesn't overpower the bait. It seems like it fits really well. So usually the 4/0. But if I'm punching and using a little thicker bait, I would try a 5/0.
JJ using that hook for anything?
Yeah, I use this one a lot too. Most of my flipping, especially like beavers or D-bombs or things like that. One thing I will add to what Chuck said, you can, if I'm flipping fluorocarbon, I'll just tie direct on there. But if I'm flipping braid into mats, a lot of times I will snell this. And the nice thing about this, the jungle hook and the Gamakatsu version, is that they do have a little bit of space. It's easy to tie a snell knot in there, which you can look up on YouTube, or we could do a video on it sometime. But that snell knot, what that'll do, especially if you're using a big 1 ounce or 1.5 ounce weight, is when you pull, that weight is coming out quite a bit and takes away some of the gap, and you'll blow that fish's mouth open and that hook will pop out. But that snell, a lot of times it'll cam it when you set the hook. It cams it out to the side. Then the hook catches on the side or the top, or it flips out to the away from the weight, and even increases your gap more.
Exposes the point.
I don't know that I've ever done that with fluorocarbon. I don't know that I would, but when I'm flipping braid in heavy mats, that's how I will use it.
The great thing about the straight shank too is on the Gamakatsu and on the owner, the eye is actually welded shut. So your line will not come out of the hook eye.
The bottom.
Yeah, so it's gonna stay in there 100% of the time.
And that's very important.
Yeah, especially when you're fighting a fish, he's trying to jump around and get off, the line can't come through that gap.
Yeah. So the last one I'll talk about is the EWG extra wide gap, and I'll maybe touch on why it's important to pick kind of club down, I guess, with these hooks. Like I was saying, the EWG is maybe a little more castable because it's not such a vertical presentation, and you're not snagging as much on a cast through a brush pile or dragging a worm. So I'll find myself using the Gamakatsu Superline, anytime we're casting with braid, or I'm dragging a big worm somewhere like Lost Grove or a lake. But so I'll use the Superline for that, the 4 or 5/0 or even 6/0 if I'm throwing a big worm. And then if I'm clubbing down to fluoro and I want to maybe be a little more careful with the presentation, I'll go down to something just like a normal
Lighter line,
normal, gauge hook, not such the heavy presentation, because your hook really will affect action. Using too much hook kind of kills action, and using too little hook kind of kills your chance of a big fish. And then the last one I want to talk about is this. It's the G Finesse series from Gamakatsu. They make a really light wire, but very sharp, very strong EWG that I find myself using on the river, as well as snaggy applications where you want to Texas rig your drop shot or something. And this hook is a great choice for doing that. So
yeah, these EWGs, especially the Superline, I tend to use them when I'm just throwing a moving bait. They seem to work really well when you're casting a bait out and moving it back towards you. That's when I choose that hook, especially on a horny toad, swimming worm. Anything that I'm casting out and reeling back, that's the hook choice that I make.
I'll use these two on a tube or a bait that's real thick, top to bottom. A swimming craw, a lot of times I'll use it on there because I'm sometimes reeling that, casting that in addition to pitching and flipping. I will add too, the other thing, like a weightless Senko, I prefer the EWG style. And the nice thing is you got basically 3 options, all of which weigh a little bit different, so you can control your rate of fall. Sometimes they might want it, you might want it to get down the bottom quicker. Sometimes you want it kind of just floating through the water column, and you can change the gauge based on your line and based on your rate of fall that you want. And I really like texposing a Senko with one of those as opposed to using a straight shank for that application.
Yeah, and you want to make sure too, when you choose the hook that you're using for your application, is you want to match the line up to the hook as well. You don't want to use 7-pound test fluorocarbon and trying to use a Superline EWG hook, because it's the bigger hook you use, the harder you have to set the hook to get the hook penetration. So you want to match it up to your line, your rod, and the application that you're using it for.
Yep. And on the flip side of that, you need to be aware of, hey, if I'm using a 3/0 regular gauge hook with braid, maybe I don't need to wail away on them, because you're pretty likely to bend that hook, especially with braid. So,
and you will lose the fish.
And you'll lose the fish. So just be aware of the gauge you're using and the line. Each require a different hook set. So is there anything else you guys want to mention today about hooks? Or
no, these aren't the only 3 hooks that they offer. There are a lot of other hooks that we'll cover in a different episode, but these 3 hooks will cover just about every fishing application
Most of your
that I use, anyway, except drop shot.
Yeah, other than your finesse presentations, and even that, like Chuck was saying, you can get the straight shank in that Gamakatsu rebarb hook. Is a real nice one for robo worms because it's still got the keeper, but it's a downsized version, so it doesn't tear the head out of your worm when you rig it. And like we said, you want the lure to balance with the hook. You want it to match the rod, the line that you're using, so that you have a full presentation. You have to kind of keep all of them balanced, otherwise you either straighten out or you don't get penetration, or bad things happen.
Yeah.
Yep. You can
And they've
definitely
happened to all of us.
you can definitely oversize or undersize. You know, that's probably a big mistake people make just starting out is slapping a 5/0 hook on a bait that doesn't need
Require it,
that,
right.
and you're gonna miss bites just because you're killing the action of that plastic. So
Yeah.
Yeah, probably universally, I probably use the 4/0 the most. I think there's if I'm using a robo worm or a trick worm, it might be a 3/0 or a 2/0, because that 4/0 can be a little bit overwhelming on a thin
Right.
bodied bait.
I think you want to use the biggest hook you can use that does not overpower the bait.
Yep.
Yep.
That's kind of my rule of thumb.
And again, today's episode is really just about the hook part of this. We're gonna have another about weighted hooks, jig heads, finesse. So this is just kind of a high level basics on
Yeah.
3 different hook types and which ones we're using. So you guys got anything else before I kind of get into the awesome sale Matt is lined up for us this week?
No, I'm good.
No, and I would say before you do that, if you have questions, Matt's a pretty good resource for you. He knows what he's doing. He talks to a lot of people, so he knows what other people are doing. And he's a great resource. If you have questions, just go down to K&K and ask him. And I think Brady's going to provide an opportunity for some deals too.
Yeah, one other thing too is we're really fortunate to have a store like K&K that carries as much fishing stuff. You know, people think they're just a hardware store, but he carries a lot of fishing stuff, a lot of different fishing stuff. He'll even carry stuff if you go in there he doesn't have it and you want him to carry it. He usually will bring it in for everybody to shop there.
Or he'll order it for you.
Yeah, or he'll order it for you.
It's the best tackle store in the state, including Bass Pro, in my opinion.
I agree.
I was just in Bass Pro and it was too much stuff to look at in there,
Well, they don't ever have enough of anything.
and they're overpriced.
Yeah, my problem is I like
I
to
just
buy
probably
not
killed
3
my
packs.
I just killed my chance at a Bass Pro sponsorship. First episode in here.
Yeah, so much for the nitro.
Darn.
The nitro deal's over.
That's too bad. All right, well, it is the off season, and that is the best time to sit around and think about the things you need for the upcoming fishing year. And those are, in my opinion, value packs. You know, getting a good quantity of the things you know you're going to use. So, Gamakatsu makes a 25 pack of the super line as well as kind of their normal gauge hook, and that's the sale Matt's going to kind of offer for the next week. And again, these sales are going to run from episode to episode, so this will start Friday at 10 a.m. and end Friday at 10 a.m. When we release the next one about line.
Yeah, and you want to take advantage of that because everybody knows, as last year with COVID, supplies are limited sometimes. So if you do need these packs, it will definitely be a good idea to take advantage of it.
Yes, so the first pack, the first 25 pack is the 584 series, which we're kind of been calling the normal gauge Gamakatsu hook. Very sharp, still a great hook. Normally these are $25 for 25 hooks. You're paying about $1 a hook. Matt's running these for $15, which is $10 off a $25 product. That's a sale you're not going to find pretty much anywhere in the fishing industry on Gamakatsu, and Matt's offering it to us, Strategic Angling, which is awesome. So 584 series, 25 pack, $15. Normally 25. Then the other one that excites me quite a bit, and I've been buying these over the years, is the 25 pack of the super line, and the super line is definitely a hook that doesn't find itself on sale very much. This is the 744 series. Again, 25 hooks, normally $28 retail. Matt's going to sell those for $19. So now's a great time to go in, look in your tackle, see what kind of hooks you got. Maybe if you add, it'd be a good time to add 25 or 50, or if you're like Chuck, maybe 1,000. So
I don't think so.
that's the sales. I'm also going to flash again our email. If you guys have thoughts, topic ideas, episode ideas, things you've got questions on, what we talked about today, send them in. It's strategicangling@outlook.com. There's also a link in the bio to click on and add your email so that you can kind of stay up to date on the latest happenings. We've got some exclusive products coming in from some manufacturers we might talk about here in the future that might make their way onto the Strategic Angling. So if you
Possibly give some giveaways too, maybe.
and we got lots of giveaways coming,
Yeah,
actually.
we'll do some
We're hopefully
stuff
we
like
can
that.
start doing almost a giveaway an episode, but haven't been able to line those up yet. So
Can we win those?
probably not. I'm thinking we're excluded, which is a bummer. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Our next episode is Friday at 10 a.m. That would be January 29th, because this one's going out the 22nd. and that one's about line and all things line, and we're excited for that one. So, you guys got anything else to sign off here today?
Nope, everything's good.
Okay, thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe if you like this content. We're gonna have these coming out every single week of the year. Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Tight
Thanks,
lines.